Welcome to the Lowdown Podcast, the show where we dive deep into the topics that directly impact the evolving originator. I'm your host, Connor Bartley. Bam! Joining me today is someone you may already be familiar with. She has built a recognizable personal brand, has a passion for pets, is a co-author of a best-selling book, and a darn good loan officer too. Kayla Kallander, welcome to the Lowdown.
Thanks for having
Yeah.
me. I love it. Everyone's so excited.
Yeah. Well, it's awesome to have you here today, Kayla, and it's an honor to visit with you. I know you're going to share a ton of value for our Lowdown listeners here today. And I have seen you active on social for a while, so I know you've been doing it for a long time, and maybe even before personal branding was even like a thing, you know? And so I'm looking forward to really diving into that journey with you more today. And I know the Lowdown listeners will find value in that because they're tuned into developing their own personal brand as well. And so always looking for ways to expand on that. And I know you're just an authority in the space. So really happy to have you here and talk about that today. But before we do, let's get some context for those that are listening about you, Kayla, and about your background and kind of where you come from and how you got here and all of that. So thanks again for joining me and just tell us a little bit about you.
Well, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be next to you, the Connor Bartley. So thank you. About me, I'm as pretty basic as you can get in terms of where I came from, what I've done, but I'm from a small town, youngest of 6 kids, so I've had to kind of work to be seen, I guess you could say, being the youngest of 6. Grew up on a farm, and when I was 15, Connor, I got a job at my local bank.
Okay.
And at 15, I can't believe they let me like be a teller then. But
Yeah.
essentially, I worked my way through high school, college, graduation from college, and essentially people are always like, how did you get into mortgage? What, how did you start? Really, it was just ever evolving, having every single position in a bank you could think of, and then getting into mortgage. And so I went to NDSU in Fargo, went for business, stayed at the bank, finished, went to work for a mortgage company. And throughout that time, I got married and had 4 pit bull rescues. So a little bit about me. I'm in Fargo, North Dakota still as a mortgage loan officer. So
Yeah. So tell me about the pit bull rescues, because I know that's a project that you have recently been posting a little bit about and have become a part of. So tell us a little bit about that, because I think that's really interesting.
yeah, I'll just have a drink of my my water here that says must love pit bulls.
There you go.
So we always had a farm dog growing up. We, lived outside. I didn't really know any different. But when I got married, my husband asked if I wanted to get a dog, and I'm like, sure. Like, but we don't have a fence, so where's the dog gonna sleep? And he's like, Kayla, inside. Like, dogs stay inside. And so that tells you that I had no idea as a 25-year-old that dogs usually are inside.
Yeah.
Well, now, if you saw my house, you would realize my dogs run the house. But, we essentially adopted 1 rescue, Pity, just fell in love. And then that led to 2, and I saw how amazing it was when my dog had a companion.
Sure.
And so the 2 of them together, and then that led to 3, and they were so easy that we were like, why not another? And as you read their stories and find out what they've gone through, one of them was found on the streets of Tulsa. Another one was being handed out in a parking lot in somewhere in North Dakota.
Yeah.
You can't help but just want to give back, because I always say elderly, children, and animals, a lot of times they just can't help themselves.
Right.
And so we fell in love with rescue because we started to hear the stories. And we would follow these websites, these shelter websites, and your heart would just break. And we started to see that pit bulls especially would get a bad reputation for nothing. It was just the owners. And so that has led to me being on the board of directors for Homeward Animal Shelter in Fargo. And we are very, very involved with rescue and giving back. And, our dogs run our lives now. So
Yeah. So at that shelter, is it just dogs, or are there other animals, or what?
there are cats too and some rabbits. So
Okay,
yes,
very
all the
cool.
all the pets.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, I
Yeah.
think it's important to have things that you're passionate about and be involved in. So I think that's really cool.
Thank you.
So, youngest of six, growing up in a small town, working at a bank since 15. Let me ask you
Yeah.
this. This is a weird question, but it popped into my head. Were you like, was the bank ever robbed?
No.
No. Okay, so you were like head of security too. Then that's good.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
I had a cousin that worked at a bank, and she was actually like, they got robbed. She had to go like
Oh,
empty the vault. Yeah, it was crazy.
oh, crazy. Yeah,
Um,
I mean, nothing ever happened. We had lots of training and everything, but no. But, just the other day, the company I worked for, one of our branches ran into that, had a robbery. It's just
Yikes.
a lot of times too, it's just people that are just, they think they know what they're doing, and they're set up now with like bait money, and like cash is not like all out in your drawer. It's like
Yeah,
set
yeah,
up
yeah.
differently now. So I think it's less happening, but it's usually people that just are, I'm sorry, stupid enough to be like, oh, they probably have a bunch of money right in front of me. And we don't hear a lot about it in Fargo, but
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was never robbed.
Well, good, good. So now that how long have you been in mortgage?
I've been in mortgage since 2014. So about
Okay, so 10
a
years.
little, well, gosh, over about 10 years, crazy. But I've been an originator for 7.
Okay, okay. And so how did you transition from what you did at the beginning into being an originator?
Well, funny story actually, Connor. Um, when I became an originator, the company I worked for gave me zero training. They're like,
Hmm.
you can talk to people, you're good at relationships, go sell mortgages. And I remember sitting down for coffee with realtors, and they were asking about appraisal systems and how they work, and I had no idea. Like, do we have an automated appraisal system? Like what? And I remember not knowing what DTI meant. And DTI, debt to income, is one of the biggest things you need to know. So I was kind of thrown to the wolves a little bit. And so I got scared. And after a year into it, of like, literally, like, I remember dry heaving in my waste paper basket because it's
Yikes.
stressful. And I
Yeah.
want to know what I'm doing. And so I got out of it and went to be a headhunter. I don't think you know this about me. Um, was in it for a month,
Yeah.
and I was like, not for me. I cannot do this. Like, it's different than it was probably
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
But so then I went back and said, you know what? I really liked mortgage. I really liked it. I just need the proper training. So I went to a company that allowed me to have a hybrid role. I was a processor and
Okay.
an originator. So if I had people that needed loans or was, wanting to work with me, I could help them, but I would have the support in the meantime while also processing other loan officers' files so that I could understand what DTI meant. I could understand
Sure.
how our appraisal system worked. So I got into it like really like thrown in, took a step back, and took a role that allowed me to learn as I went.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
yeah,
Interesting. So,
yeah.
was there a moment somewhere along the way in the last 7 years where you realized, hey, you know what? I'm pretty good at this.
I think things change all the time. I still think, why don't I know that? Why don't I know this? Like, it's crazy how much changes, but I would say it was probably a few years ago, realtors would reach out to me and say, hey, my client is needing help. They really need their hand held, and I know you held my previous client's hands. These people really need education. Can you help? And Connor, what I was realizing was there were loan officers that would just take an application, send an email. And what I was doing was having a buyer consult, hearing people's visions, their goals, their fears, their dreams, their budget, then gathering the data, and then having another consultation in person or Zoom, not on the phone, so I could
Mhm.
share my screen and educate. And even to this day, I find that other lenders are not doing that. And so I feel like I'm good at it because I'm taking the time to educate and empower my clients. And now more than ever, that's what clients need, because confident clients make confident decisions. And as a realtor, you want a confident client, right? You want them to feel confident when buying a home or
Yeah.
pulling the trigger. So that's when I found out, like, okay, I'm doing something way better than most, and I need to continue to do this and focus on education for the consumer.
So, did anyone teach you to do it that way, or was that just sort of the way that you felt most comfortable having that interaction?
I think with all the podcasts I listen to and the Dave Savage videos, and I think just
Okay.
the collaboration of hearing what other people do. I mean, since social media has come out with LinkedIn and Instagram and YouTube, I think that we all can learn something every day. And I think it was just accumulation of things that over
Yeah.
time where I learned that, okay, this actually works way better. So
Yeah.
I would say it was because of tons of other loan officers that I was listening to.
Yeah. So I want to stress that point because I, the information is out there. It's on the individual to pursue it and seek it and implement. And but the coaching is there. I mean, in this world that we live in of social media and influence and the personal branding and all of that. I mean, the coaches of this industry are just giving it all away.
Yeah.
And if you pay close enough attention, you can really learn a lot. Now, I think there's a lot to be said for also going one step further and paying for coaching and really
Yeah.
getting, that accountability and that weekly, side by side aspect
Mhm.
of it. But even if you're just getting started,
Oh, yeah.
listening to podcasts, going on LinkedIn and Facebook and joining those groups and really just following the right people, you can learn a lot. So I
Mhm.
appreciate you saying that because I think that's an important point that some people skip. And
Mhm.
in an industry where it's very much sink or swim,
Yeah.
there's a lot of life preservers out there for you.
Mhm.
So
There are, and I
um,
think taking the time to like in the morning, every time I get ready for work, I throw on a podcast. Is it always about mortgage? No. But if I can use that time or when you're driving or, it's so often that we can just scroll and scroll. Well, go scroll on another loan officer who you respect and is doing it right and just go get ideas. I mean, a lot of times it's entertaining too what they provide. So
yeah,
it's super
yeah,
helpful.
absolutely. So, what really fuels your fire today about what you do? I mean, what are you passionate about, or what are the things that really keep you going in this industry?
Yeah. I think I love taking someone, and I think I took this from when I was like a virtual banker, but people would call in and they would be like upset, right? Who's going to call like customer service and be like, I love my credit card or I love my
Right.
HSA account? It's, hey, my HSA card's not working. Hey, here's a problem. And I always love to take people from like one end of the spectrum to the other, where they were like my best friend when they hung up the phone and they were so happy, where they almost would apologize for being so like upset. You know what I mean? So I think that's
Sure.
kind of where I got this. But when clients come to me, especially first time buyers, even repeat buyers, there is a sense of uncertainty usually because they don't know what to expect. They're not taught anything in school. A lot of times they're getting their information off TikTok or Instagram. They're not really getting or their parents that bought 30 years ago. So I feel like what kind of drives me is knowing that I can take someone and take this fear and anxiety, and at the end of the conversation, feel like this stress just pouring off of them. And
Hmm.
they feel confident and excited and optimistic about something that's been constantly talked about in the media as you shouldn't buy now, rates are too high, you
Yeah,
know,
true.
um, don't do this, do this. And when people realize that it's not a one size fits all, and they talk to me and they're like, oh my gosh, this could work for us. And today I have a client who is, get this, Connor, 21 years old, buying his first home.
Wow.
And he's coming to closing with $866. And it's because we found ways to get assistance, educate him. His
Yeah.
payments less than he thought. And he's like, should I be doing this? I'm only 21. And I'm like, absolutely. So
Good for
like it's
him. Yeah.
it's just like empowering people like you can do this despite what you've heard or what you think you know. And I think that's what kind of fuels me every
Yeah.
day.
Well, I love the statement you made earlier where you said confident buyers make confident decisions, and I thought that was great and just speaks to that, education side of it.
Yeah, it's
So
very
on the
important.
subject of personal branding, was that something that because you're very active on social, and I know that there are several stories of people who you've done loans for that are in other states because they saw you on one platform or another, and these things. And I know a lot of people that I talk to, because I talk to a lot of loan officers in my line of work. They
Mhm.
tell me, hey, yeah, I know personal branding is something I should be doing. I know social media is something that I should probably develop more in the next year. And then, days
Mhm.
go by, weeks go by, months go by, and they still haven't taken action. So, what was the moment for you where it made sense to start doing that? Did it just come naturally? Like, what spurred on that action from you?
Yeah, I think for me, it wasn't on purpose. I don't know why I started using LinkedIn probably about 10 years ago. And I would just post my pictures of closings all the time. And I liked LinkedIn. No one was really using it. I don't even know how I got on there because I didn't use it to find a job. But I would post my closings. And I remember, Connor, people like would make comments like, oh, if you do a loan with Kayla, you'll get a picture. Like there was like some side comments, and I'm like,
Sure.
okay, well, or like, oh, are you gonna take a picture? Like, okay, cool, like good one. And I was at a restaurant with my sister on a Saturday night. Actually, it was like a bar, I think, bar restaurant. Anyway, and this guy came up to me and he said, and this was at a point where I was like, is this even worth it? Like
Right.
to post, like people know what I do, but do people care? Is it kind of like gloating? Like I didn't know if it felt like I was boasting or what it really was
Sure.
perceived as to the consumer. And this guy came up to me and said, "Hey, you're the LinkedIn girl." And I was like, "Hey." And he told me his name. To this day I don't remember what his name was, but he said, "I don't need a mortgage, but I know that when I do, I'm going to be coming to you." And so what that did for me, Connor, was like make me realize that even though people weren't commenting, liking, sharing, they were still saying it. This guy knew my name, he
Right.
recognized my face, and he knew what I did. So if I was to be more intentional and think of other things to post to share what I do, how much more could I, how many more people could I reach? So
Right.
then I started to become more intentional with my posts and not like you'll see people post a photo of a closing, but be like, oh, closing day. Well, I started to tell stories like, hey, here's how this person, who thought they couldn't buy a home is now a repeat buyer
Smart.
and telling stories. And then it got to be where I think it was in 21. I was on Instagram and I was like, ooh, I better not post this. It's really personal. I don't know. I was like cooking food. I don't know what it was. And I'm like, no, like I should post this. And then when I started, Connor, putting in personal information like my dogs, the lake home,
Hmm.
maybe me getting my hair done one day, it wasn't just mortgage, mortgage, mortgage. That's when I found that people got to see the real Kayla, not Kayla, this in the square mortgage lender.
Right.
And that's when the conversation started happening and the followers and the engagements. And that kind of then spurred into the personal and business on all platforms.
Yeah.
So, kind of the long story longer.
Yeah. No, I love that, and I think it's important for people to hear that at one point you were struggling with, am I,
Yeah.
bragging? Is this the right way to
Yeah.
do it? Do I, and just that insecurity and that just questioning whether or not it was even worth it, right? Because sometimes we just throw up our hands and go, this is not getting any results.
I
I'm not,
know.
I'm not getting anything from this. And, personal branding, just in conversations I've had, my own personal experience, it's a journey. It is something
Hmm.
that you've got to be, it's a long play.
It
Um,
is.
Going viral is never the goal, nor is going viral a guarantee that anything is going to come from that either. So,
Right.
so it's interesting to hear you say that there was like that moment of, oh, should I even be doing this? And I love
Yeah.
the evolution of the content and how you said you're starting to weave in the stories with the personal
Hmm.
and things like that. Does that ever does that ever get awkward for you? Like, do you ever find yourself out and people know more than you would want want them to know, or like how does that ever kind of cross over into real life, or has it been okay?
I know what I'm getting into, right? I know,
Sure.
like, okay, if I post this, someone in Fargo might recognize my house and know where I live. Like, I've thought about that. But for me, it's like, this sounds weird, but like, people will ask me, like, well, did you see on Facebook I posted blah 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 of my family, and I in my head I'm like, oh, I didn't see that. I feel bad. Shoot, I didn't see that you took that trip.
Yeah.
And so I automatically at times have been thinking like, oh, that person knows what I'm doing because they're on Facebook. But I think we have to kind of circle back and say not everyone's going to see your stuff, but
Right.
it doesn't get awkward because I know like this is part of it. It's kind of like this is probably a bad like I guess comparison, but like when people become famous from being in a movie, they know that people are going to recognize them. I think as we pour ourselves online, that's just part of it. Like you know that that's going to happen. But my husband said a couple of years ago, he's like, Kayla, it's getting awkward for me because when I take the dogs to the dog park, people recognize the dogs. So,
No.
so it got awkward, I would say, for him because he's like, people would come up to me and know me and the dogs.
Yeah.
And like, that was probably about it. But I think it's just, take it with a grain of salt. If,
Yeah.
as long as your focus is doing the right thing and you're not, some lenders get, pretty vocal and raw and share things that I normally wouldn't. I think it's just
Sure.
part of the territory.
Yeah. Well, I think the thing that people need to keep in mind is you control what people know about you.
Yeah.
And that's a benefit of the platform is you don't have to share everything.
You know.
And you can sort of control and frame out, what you want other people to know about you. And so that kind of segues into something else, which is from a strategic standpoint, do you follow like a posting schedule? Are you just going off, with the flow when something strikes you inspirationally, or like how intentional are you these days about your content and what you're putting out there?
This probably isn't good advice, but I don't have anything. I don't use a scheduler. I don't have a plan.
Yeah.
I just know that I usually take what I'm going through that day. So, Connor, today, I just told you about this, young 21-year-old buying a house. I was like, oh, I'm going to share like the closing disclosure, like block out the thing, share this. I quickly just did a reel and it took me, I think I did like 4 takes because I kept messing up.
Yeah.
But I just do it on the spot because it's fresh in my head. I get fearful that if I block it all out, then I'll be like, oh, what was that one deal I had? Or what could I talk about? But I think there's value in doing that because then you've got blocked content. So what I do, kind of one of my hacks, is I do a lot of like B-roll. So I'll do me driving or me
Mhm.
working, or a lot of times I'll work in my home office and my dogs will jump up on me and you might see some of those,
Yeah, sure.
and I'll just do that. And then once something's fresh in my head and I want to tell something, I'll put like words over it. So that has been something that's kind of saved me. But a lot of times it's more just in the moment.
Yeah,
Um, I know there's a lot of people that batch, and there's so much value in doing that too, because then you're set for some time.
sure. So because you've been consistent for a long amount of time, do you feel like it has just become easier to recognize when's a postable moment or something along those lines?
You said something earlier that is so true. It's the long game, right?
Mhm.
And I think I'm still feeling like I'm playing the long game. I still feel like I have more people to reach. And so it's not that it becomes easier to recognize, it's that you have to make sure that when something's on your mind, you just take the time. I would say take 30 minutes a day and try to block that, because what I find is if, as a girl, sometimes I don't want to show up without my, hair combed and like my lashes on. And so I'm like, well, I'll wait till I'm, ready for work and film. It's like sometimes you just have to be ready to just do it. But I've found lately it's been a little harder because
Yeah,
if if I get busier in files or networking events or realtor meetings, it becomes on the back burner. So if you don't
sure.
have a plan, that's where I notice I can kind of slip. Or if I'm like, oh, it's a Saturday, I don't want to film because like I'm, all grungy from working at the lake, I won't do it.
Yeah.
So it's harder and easier. I can't really say, but like at the same time.
Right. Yeah. Well, and social media is kind of brutal. Like if you don't show up for 2 days in a row, it's like forget you, man. Like,
No,
So
not anything on, guys.
yeah,
Or
it's hard
no,
to
or
take a
probably
vacation from.
never have. do you ever have like where you follow someone and then all of a sudden you don't realize they've been gone until they show up and you're like, oh, I forgot about that person. Like
Sure.
that's how I remember. I'm like, oh wow, where have they been? Like when they
Yeah.
show back up.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Very true. Well, now, have you seen, like, what have been the benefits of having a personal brand? I mentioned it a little bit before, but share more with the audience about just how you've been found through some of this content. You know, I know there's stories of people in other states and things like that, but I think that's important for other people to hear.
I think that now more than ever, people are going to Google and they're going to their phones to find out, like, okay, I was referred to 3 different lenders. Who are these 3 lenders?
Hmm.
And what I found is that by me developing my brand, when you go and Google Kayla Kallander, you will find pages and pages because I do podcasts, I do reels, I post on Facebook, I have my website. And when you have all of these things, when people see your face constantly, Connor, it creates this law of familiarity. Like, well, if I see her so much,
Hmm.
wow, she's speaking at this college classroom. Oh, she's part of First Home IQ and she's got this. So they think, wow, okay, she's very involved. She clearly knows what she's doing.
Right.
And I have found that, if I am up against another lender and I see their loan estimate, I'll say, you should Google that person and, do your research. Yes, shop around, but make sure you know who you're working with. And oftentimes I'll have people come back and say, yeah, we did our research and we want to work with you. They won't tell
Yeah.
me why, but I'll know it's because they could find like my digital resume. So when you have
Yeah.
this brand, it follows you on the internet. They can find out, okay, oh, Kayla has dogs. We like dogs. Like that's great because
Right.
we want to get a dog when we buy this house. Or oh, Kayla's lives in North Dakota. My family lives there. It's just this ability to be seen without having to get on a phone or meet in person and have to explain yourself.
Right.
And so I found people that essentially will be referred to me, but I'll know that they'll go and look me up. I do that when I want to go to a restaurant or if I'm being referred to a doctor, I'm going to online to look them up. And so I feel like having a brand just gives you that more familiar, that like more notoriety, I guess
Yeah.
you could say. And people
Yeah.
trust that. They trust the
Sure.
internet.
Yeah. Yeah. So one thing that I've noticed about your LinkedIn page, just in researching ahead of time, is you've done a great job of optimizing the page. And so I'm going to get a little granular here for any
Yeah.
of the nerds in the audience that are really trying to dive into this. You know, it's important that if someone's going to find you or by accident or on purpose, but if let's say it's by accident and they're curious and they want to go check out your page, um, you can fumble the ball still there. You know, if you don't have
Yeah.
your homepage optimized to where you're showing up with a digital resume, as you say, to where it's very easy for them to see a certain level of expertise, to gain an understanding of what it is that you actually do, things like that. It's that could be a miss if you haven't done that. But the thing that I really wanted to call out that I thought was really smart is on your featured section on LinkedIn, you've got your Google reviews link there, which I think is a brilliant thing to put in the featured sections, because everybody reads the Google reviews, right? And LinkedIn
Hmm.
is a place where you don't see reviews often. And so to be able to find that on your page, I thought was really smart. But how much time did you put into that? Just sort of putting together that home page.
It's always evolving. I probably change my banner. I'll listen to a podcast and be like, oh my gosh, I should change my banner to say
Yeah,
this because it used to say that. Dan Smikoska, which
yeah,
was helpful with my featured section. I had never utilized it until like last month. And so on my page, I try to find ways that make me stand out. I might say, top 1% in the nation for mortgage lending. I might say a tagline about me. But I try to have my face in as much as possible because I think there's, again, that whole law of familiarity. But
sure.
in that featured section, you can add video, you can add links, and they show up pretty large when you're scrolling on someone's LinkedIn. So
Yeah,
thanks to Dan, Dance McCoska, where there's smoke, there's fire. He was great at helping me. We were in that cohort together,
Yeah. Shout out to
where
him.
he talked about utilizing that, and it took me 10 minutes to do. And I'm like, oh my gosh, why didn't I use this sooner? And now people can go and be like, oh, okay, here's a video of her. Here's her reviews. Oh, here's her Instagram. And that takes them down a whole separate path. And then I can have my website. If you've got the LinkedIn Premium, you can put in there, click here to see my website or to view my
Right.
newsletter. And so every time you post, that is under your name. And that was super helpful. And Dan helped me realize that too.
Yeah. And so for the again for the nerds out there, in the book Traffic Secrets by Russell Brunson, I highly recommend you read it. There's a great comment in there about the homepage, and basically, and I can't remember, I can't give credit to who is quoted in the book, but essentially it's social media, on the feed is you're at a party, right? And you wouldn't go into a party selling people on what you do. Like you don't go to a party and go, "Hey, I do mortgages." You should, like, you're at a party, right? So you're going to talk about more about what you're doing, and like your day to day and other fun things, personal things about yourself. But if they come to your house, if they go to your homepage, well, you can sell them if they're at your house, right? And so that was kind of for me, that was a really cool way of differentiating between, how you would post content and what goes out into the feed versus what you want to have people to see when they come into your home. And it's kind of like, your trophies are on your mantle at home. You don't need to talk about your trophies out in public, right? Like, wait until they're at the house and then they can see all the accolades, and then that's when you can say, hey, so I thought that was a really good analogy, and like that book it's awesome, so I highly recommend that. And
Traffic Secrets.
Traffic Secrets, Russell
Okay.
Brunson. It's part of a trilogy series. It's the third book of the three, but it goes through a
Okay.
lot of really smart tactics for social media.
I love that.
And it breaks down each platform individually. So it's really cool. But
I love that.
is there anything that we haven't talked about on the subject of personal brand or anything like that that you think is important for these listeners to hear today?
I used to get so caught up in like authenticity. Like I need to be like in my head, I'm like, I need to be more authentic. And I think what I thought, and this is me just kind of spitballing out loud, being vulnerable right now. But it would be, oh, Kayla, like show up, like I talked about, like, oh, without your hair and makeup done, and show up like, don't always show like the good, like show the bad, like that's authentic. And I'm like, you know what, there's enough negative in the world. I don't need to go hop on and be like, hey, it's a rough day, I'm really sick, I've had these back issues, Connor. I'd be like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm so and I thought about it, I'm like, I'm not being authentic. And then someone had said something to me, and then someone else did, and someone else did, and they're like, I love your authenticity. And I'm like, but I'm not showing up negative, but I'm not showing up like all the tough part, and I'm not showing
Yeah.
up without my makeup on. And I thought about it, and I'm like, no, but I'm showing up, me being
I
positive. That's
do.
Kayla. I'm showing up
Yeah.
my life at the lake. I'm showing up with my dogs. Like I'm showing up with my dogs tearing up their animals. But I kept thinking that authenticity, and maybe this is in my head, but that it had to be like, here's my challenging hard time, and here's what I'm going through. And not that you shouldn't do that,
Right.
but me showing up and being a light and being a lighthouse and showing that side of me that I feel like radiates, that is authentic. And
Sure.
so if you're wondering like, oh, I should be more raw and real, like this is Kayla being raw and real, but you don't have to show up and share like the things that you aren't happy about. Like we just had a presidential election. There's people that are upset and there's people that are happy. I mean, you can show up and share that you're unhappy, but in my head, I just keep thinking there's so much of that in the world. I'm going to shine from within and show that side of Kayla. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that helps your listeners, but it's something that was in my head for a while.
Yeah, no, that's very helpful. I've heard the comment from a marketing guy, Seth Godin, that consistency beats authenticity every time. So
Mm,
just staying consistent is maybe even more important because kind of what you described a little bit, that would almost come across as manufactured authenticity, right? Like if you're thinking, well, I'm not wearing makeup, I got to do a video, right? Like, well, now that's not really authentic, right? Because you're feeling like you've got to take
good point.
advantage of this moment
Hmm.
just because so you can post it, right? And I think
Right. Yeah.
when authenticity is when it just comes from natural, when it's from the heart, when it's
Yep.
easy. And so yeah, anything forced, anything feeling like you have to do it, uh, don't do it.
Hmm.
Because people can
Yeah.
see right through that stuff. We're not dummies. So,
I like
but
manufactured authenticity. I like that. That's like
yeah.
a good like keyword. Awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. So I prepped you for these questions. We're gonna have a little fun now. Okay, so we'll move on from personal brand and we'll move into just what I like to call the lightning round here.
Ooh.
And these are just little fun questions that we get to know a little bit more about you and that sort of thing. But hopefully none of them are too hard. But okay, first one. What is a favorite quote of yours from a movie, TV show, or song lyric?
So my sisters and I, again, youngest of six, there's five of us
Mhm.
girls, one boy. We are obsessed with Friends. And so pretty much every time I talk to my sisters, we're spitting out something. And it's related to like what we're talking about. Like if you
Yeah.
watch Friends, you know Chandler. So I'd be like, oh, could it be any worse weather out today? Like we're always like living in Friends like conversation. So
Yeah.
that would be kind of my favorite, but it's like ingrained in us.
Where do you have a favorite one, like a favorite quote or pivot or uh
Um, So Monica always yells, "I know," and I feel
yeah.
like that's what my sister will call and say, "Oh my gosh, I can't wait for Christmas," and I'm like, "I know," and she'll be like, "I know," and so it's like a screaming fest. So that's
Yeah.
probably
Yeah.
our favorite.
That's fun. Yeah. We're a Seinfeld house, so I can
Ah,
relate a lot to that, but yeah, we do more
yes, we
Seinfeld
can.
than we do Friends. Okay, so what is a hidden talent that you have?
Um, so I can play the flute and piccolo. I went to music camp for 6 years. I really went
Okay.
because they had a dance on Monday nights and I really liked boys then. But I went for um, flute, and so we went to state. I played all through high school, and so when you play the flute, if
Yeah.
you are first chair, you get to play the little piccolo too. So I could really rock out like a chromatic scale or some type of like Star Spangled Banner. So.
That's awesome. Did you ever like do Star Spangled Banner before a sporting event or anything?
Oh, yeah, we sang. We again, small town. You were good at everything.
Yeah, yeah.
So we would sing like triple trios, and then we would play, in the band. And I actually, this is really embarrassing, but I was even the band majorette. So like the
Okay.
type where like you blow the whistle, and then you would, you know,
Sure, yeah.
direct.
Yeah.
That was me. Yeah.
Got up on the big like the stand in front of it. Yeah, okay.
So we were in a parade, and I would have to lead a parade, and like we would do like all of the things, and
Oh, that's
yeah,
fun. That's
really
awesome.
cool.
Okay, cool. Well, bust out a flute solo someday.
Yeah.
If you weren't a loan officer, what profession would you be? If you weren't a loan officer, what profession would you be?
I can't help but think I would be in some type of like either something to do with animal rescue, but I feel like my heart wouldn't be able to handle it. But probably aesthetics or some type of cosmetology or something because every time I go into a salon, it is just the best place in the world and people are happy and you're making people feel like really relaxed and great and beautiful and
Yeah.
I don't know, I think I would do something along those lines.
Okay. Um, what is a skill that you have always wanted to learn how to do?
So I grew up in Walhalla, North Dakota, which was next to Frostfire Mountain. And I never ever skied or snowboarded because when you were in sports, you kind of couldn't. Your coaches like wouldn't let you. And my
Okay.
mom was a worrywart and didn't want me to. And my husband from Moorhead, Minnesota, he's always snowboarded. And so I grew up next to this like mountain, never
Okay.
did it. and he still snowboards, and I would love to learn how to ski or snowboard. So
Yeah.
maybe that's
Okay. Cool.
the books for 2025. We'll see.
There you go. So what sports did you play?
I played basketball and volleyball.
Okay. Okay. Very cool.
Yeah.
I've got two volleyball girls.
Um,
And yeah, I've got one was a libero and DS, and the other is a outside. So
Oh, power hitter and back row specialist. What? You have
yeah,
some talent in your family.
I'm
Wow.
telling you, man. Yeah,
Okay.
my younger one's still playing. My oldest, she's retired, but
Okay.
but my
Is
youngest
that
still plays. She's her freshman year now. This past season, she was a sixth rotation outside. And now we're just about to get started into the club season where we're doing practices, and in December we'll start those tournaments, and we'll go to like Minnesota this next year. We'll go to Philadelphia for the national qualifying tournaments. We'll see how they do, but yeah, it's fun. You know, I love the
that's
sport. It's really
awesome.
cool to watch.
Oh, it's so good. They've gotten so much more advanced, and oh, I bet they love it. That's
Oh,
awesome.
it's crazy. It's crazy how talented
Mm.
kids, how fast young kids pick up these skills now, and how
Oh yeah.
advanced the coaching has gotten.
Oh yeah.
Um,
And they can watch stuff on like TikTok and learn things on YouTube that like we couldn't when we were younger. Like
oh
it's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah. It's just the acceleration of learning is
Yeah.
crazy.
That's
Okay,
awesome.
last question. What is
Okay.
one thing from your childhood, just nostalgia? Could be food, could be a TV show, could be a movie, could be anything, right? Fashion, whatever. What is one thing from your childhood that you wish would make a massive comeback?
You know, Christmas, like your
Yeah.
1990s Christmas. Like,
Okay.
think of like the brown paper bags with the peanuts and the apple and your Christmas program. Remember how exciting it was to
Yeah.
put on your favorite Christmas outfit and go to your Christmas program and sing jingle bells in front of your parents. And you go to your favorite aunts for, Christmas Day. Like that was so magical. And not that you
Yeah.
don't have that now, but when you're younger, it's just so
Yeah.
much more special. So,
Yeah, the magic
yeah.
of Christmas is really cool. Have
Yeah.
you guys decorated yet?
No, but I'm fully intending to. We're going to the lake today, and I'm
Yeah.
fully intending on putting out my Christmas tree. And then Sunday, I'm planning to attack the primary house in Fargo. So,
There
I'm
you
a
go.
lender when I talk about my home as a primary home.
Primary house.
You know, but what about you? Have you decorated? I'm guessing you have.
November 1st. Yeah, my so
Oh,
the schools here, they give the day off after Halloween, and that started a couple of years ago. And so as a family, we just decided, okay, that'll be the day we bring everything down because the kids are here and they can just, it's something to do that day. Because
yeah.
this year it was a Friday, but in the past it was a Wednesday or a third. It's just a random day off in the middle of the week. So it's kind of like, what do you do? So we've made it a decoration day, and yeah, I mean, it's really cool. In the morning, I can wake up, I can turn the tree on, and have like the glow of that, and it's just sort of it's very peaceful, and
Oh,
it's cool.
I love
So
that. Well, I
yeah,
need to like get my button gear and start decorating because I got to keep up with you.
yeah, yeah. I mean, hey, my kids wouldn't let us not do it. So
I love it. Good
so,
traditions. Traditions are fun. That's such a cool thing you guys do. That's awesome.
yeah, it's great. Well, Kayla, thank you for joining the Lowdown podcast. It was great talking with you. I'm sure the listeners got a ton of value out of it, and
I hope
just
so.
appreciate you joining me. And hope you have a great day and tons of success in 2025.
Back at you, Connor. We'll see you soon.
Thanks.